Welcome, today's story is full of drama. Like and subscribe to stay updated. Let's get started.
Have you ever wondered whether your life is predetermined before you're even born, or if it unfolds randomly through a series of choices made by you or others that shape your existence? This question has puzzled humanity for as long as we've existed, yet no definitive answer has been found. My name is Noah Carter, and like everyone else, I've developed my own perspective on this mystery. I grew up as an only child in a hardworking middle-class family. My parents, Daniel and Eleanor Carter, juggled their jobs while I focused on school. Although I wouldn't call myself a stellar student, I managed to hold my own academically. However, there was one area where I truly thrived: computers. My journey into the world of technology began when I met Ethan Brooks, a skinny 9-year-old who moved in next door with his family. Ethan and I hit it off instantly, and he became my best friend for the 6 years we were neighbors. Ethan's dad, Gregory, was a self-proclaimed computer enthusiast. Though his career took a different path, Gregory had always dreamed of teaching and saw an opportunity in sharing his passion with his son. Ethan, in turn, shared what he learned with me, and I quickly developed a knack for it. Seeing my interest, Gregory began teaching both of us, thrilled to have two eager students. As our skills grew, Gregory made us swear never to use our knowledge for harmful purposes. That promise marked the beginning of an exciting and transformative journey. 4 years into my friendship with the Brooks family, my life took a devastating turn when I lost my mother in a car accident. The grief was overwhelming, but Ethan, always the thoughtful friend, recognized that I needed a distraction. He convinced his dad to accelerate our lessons, immersing me in the world of advanced technology and helping me find a way to cope with the pain. By the time Ethan's family had to move away, which, although happening long after my mother's death, was still the second worst day of my life to date, I was able to do things with computers that most people couldn't even dream about. It was the autumn between my junior and senior year of high school, and without Ethan there to help occupy my free time, I desperately needed something else to do. My father and I argued relentlessly about me getting a part-time job. Dad feared that once I got a taste of having a steady income, college would lose some of its appeal. He complained that too many kids take time off from their schooling to either find themselves or save up money, and then life gets in the way, preventing them from ever returning to their education. In all actuality, I don't think my dad minded the fact that I wanted to work, but it was the paycheck he was scared I'd get hooked on. We finally managed to reach a compromise when I suggested looking into some volunteer work for the autumn and reminded him how good stuff like that would look on college applications. One would think that the offer of free labor would be in high demand, especially with the declining economy. The truth was, there weren't many opportunities to choose from. In the end, there was one detail that, although well below my skill level, was still somewhat worthy of inquiring about. It seemed that, due to budget cuts, the state needed someone to upgrade software on a few of their older computers. The work itself would be no challenge to someone like me whatsoever, but the real shocker was that the PCs they wanted upgraded just happened to be located in a medium-security women's prison. I debated whether I should even apply for the position, but figured I could at least go through the interview process and see what they had to say. Naturally, I sailed right past the computer portion of their examination, but the hoops they made me jump through in order to pass their extensive security background check started to make me question whether this was even worth messing with. Evidently, I must have met their quota because they did offer me the job. That's when the second shoe fell. I learned that if I took the position, I would actually be working with a real live-in mate. What the hell was I getting myself into? In the end, it was my sense of loss and sheer boredom that convinced me to go through with it. Though I did feel a little better when they assured me that the woman I would be working with was incarcerated for a white-collar crime, and that I would essentially not be in any real danger. Famous last words. Clara Middleton was not exactly the most pleasant woman I have ever come into contact with. To be honest, she was an absolute nightmare from the moment we said hello, obviously blaming the world for her lot in life. I would come to realize much later, however, that she really did have good reason to feel this way. Our work was long and boring as we had to upgrade the operating systems on over 70 computers. Since they didn't want any leftover residue from the previous version to potentially cause problems down the road, we had to dump each hard drive and start from scratch. This was a slow process and would have given us ample time to engage in conversation. Unfortunately, it became abundantly apparent early on that Clara had no desire to talk to me. It was about a week into our assignment when Clara came across her first problem machine. "This damn thing just won't work," she complained. "What seems to be the problem?" I asked. "I keep getting this damn blue screen," she said. "Here, why don't we switch computers?" I suggested. "What makes you think that you can do any better, genius?" she asked. "All I can do is try," I replied, smiling. "Fine," she relented. I was getting sick of that piece of junk anyway. The problem was easy to resolve, and I had it fixed in a matter of minutes. "It seems to be loading fine now," I told her. "How did you do that?" she asked in amazement. These older machines sometimes don't respond very well with their hardware components. I ended up just changing a few IRQs in the BIOS. "It seems to like this configuration much better," I explained. "You're pretty good at this kind of stuff. So, when are you going to start quizzing me about the money?" she wanted to know. "What money?" I asked, totally confused by her question. "You don't have to play dumb with me. You're not the first spy they've sent in to try and get me to crack. I'll tell you what I told them. I'm innocent and have no idea where all that cash disappeared to," she stated. "You'll have to forgive me, but I don't have the slightest idea what you're talking about," I told her. "Yeah, right. Do you honestly think that I'm going to believe some kid just happened to volunteer to work in a women's prison installing software during his autumn break from school for no good reason? Face facts, you're after the money, just like everybody else. The problem is, I don't have it and I have no idea who does." Clara said that I still didn't have a clue as to what money she was referring to, but the reason I was volunteering this autumn was that my mother died last year, and my best friend for the past 5 years had recently moved halfway around the country. I was trying to find something to occupy my mind so that I wasn't constantly dwelling on it. I explained as a tear rolled down my cheek. "You're telling the truth, aren't you? I figured they would have told you all about me before having you start working here," she said. "All I was told about you is that you were pretty good with computers, the crime you were convicted of was white-collar, and I would essentially be in no danger while helping you," I admitted. "Everything you just said is correct, but the truth is I really am innocent. I don't have any idea what happened to the money," she told me. "First of all, Clara, I still don't know what money you are referring to. And secondly, I believe you," I replied honestly. "I'm talking about the $92 million that suddenly disappeared from the accounts I was managing at the investment firm I used to work for," she said while watching my face to gauge my reaction. "Wow, that certainly is a huge hunk of change," I replied, totally shocked by the figure she just quoted. "You really had no idea about the money?" she asked in wonderment. "No, ma'am, I didn't," I replied. "You said you believed I was innocent. Do you still feel that way now that you know what I was convicted of?" she asked. "I'm sure of it," I replied, staring her straight in the eye. "How can you possibly be so certain? We barely know each other," Clara asked. "Mom was always a bit psychic. She even predicted that she would die young and tried to prepare Dad and me for it, but neither one of us wanted to believe her. She always said that I had a touch of the gift myself, though it was nowhere near as well developed as hers. She was able to teach me how to look into someone's soul to find the truth. I know you're not guilty, just as sure as I know my own name is Noah Carter. And although it may take some time, I'm going to prove it and get you out of here," I assured her. "Don't make promises you can't keep," was her quick reply. "I never do. My father taught me a man's word is his oath," I stated. "You're just a boy," was her flippant response. "Be that as it may, I am still going to get you out of here," I told her. "Whatever," she replied, not believing I would actually do it. "Why don't we talk about something else?" she suggested. So from that point on, Clara and I started to share general aspects of our lives with one another. The two of us actually had many things in common. I learned that she was an only child and that both of her parents were deceased. She had to struggle through her accounting degree on mainly part-time jobs and student loans. It was her proficiency and excellent grades that landed her the job at Hamilton Financial Group. She said that at this point, she thought that her luck had actually started to turn around. She got a promotion and was finally earning a decent salary. She'd even met a guy and started having aspirations about becoming a wife and mother. That was when her life fell apart. Somehow, her passwords were used to steal massive amounts of money from client accounts. She had sole access to the funds, which totaled just over $92 million. The money was never recovered, and since she wouldn't return the money, she was given the maximum sentence allowed by the state. Can you believe it? I have to stay in this hellhole for 45 years. My life is ruined, she said, wiping away the tears with her shirt. I won't let you stay in here for that long. No matter what it takes, I will find a way to prove your innocence, I stated with as much conviction as I could muster. I know you mean well, but there is really nothing you can do. Please stop making promises you can't keep, she said. A man's word is his bond, I told her as I was leaving. See you on Monday, I said. The first thing I did when I got home that night was to look up everything I could about her case. Since I truly believed that Clara was innocent, then it only stood to reason that someone had to have set her up. My job was to find the person or more likely persons responsible for doing so. I started compiling a list of anyone who was either directly or indirectly involved in Clara's life during that time period. I remembered creating a family tree for my genealogy class and used that same method for linking my suspects together. When it was time for work on Monday, I decided to keep Clara in the dark about what I was doing. I wanted to hear her story but was afraid she would get the impression that I was just after the money again. That was definitely not my motivation. As our friendship grew more intense, I had to always walk a fine line between trying to ascertain as much information as I could without making her feel like I was milking her for the story. I felt so sad to learn that basically everyone in Clara's life had abandoned her. I vowed that I would always be there for her, no matter what the outcome of my investigation revealed. As the weeks passed, it became clear to both of us that our time working together would soon be over. I made the suggestion that she could add my name to her list of pre-approved visitors so that I could still see her after our job was finished. Noah, I don't think it's healthy for you to be spending time with me instead of trying to find friends your own age, she said. Don't you think it should be my decision as to whom I choose to spend time with? I asked her. Not when you're obviously becoming too attached for your own good, Clara stated. I thought we were friends, I asked her. I can't afford to have friends at this stage of my life, she replied. Everybody needs friends, I assured her. Well, not me. And I especially don't need some lovesick teenager drooling all over the place. The girls already accuse me of robbing the cradle as it is, Clara told me. Look, I won't deny that I find you attractive, but I have never once said or done anything that was even remotely out of line, I argued. You don't have to when desire is written all over your face, she challenged. I don't think I'm such a bad guy, I said defensively. That's part of the problem, you're not a guy. You're just a kid, she told me. Maybe so, but I am the kid that's going to get you out of here, I stated with conviction. Would you just stop saying that? We both know it's never going to happen, she yelled, causing the guards to look our way. Look, I give you my word. I am working on getting you set free. It will just take a little more time, that's all, I tried to convince her. Do you really expect me to have any faith in some schoolboy? She asked. I'm not your average schoolboy, I told her. Fine. If you're so gifted, then you won't have any problems finishing the rest of this by yourself because I quit, she exclaimed as she bellowed for the guard to take her back to her cell. Although I pleaded with her not to go, Clara refused to relent, leaving the remainder of our work for me to deal with on my own. Of course, I completely understood where she was coming from. I knew it was stupid to keep bringing up the fact that I was working on getting her released, but I was just so desperate to give her some degree of hope that I couldn't keep my damn mouth shut. Now she wouldn't even talk to me. It didn't take long for me to finish up our little project, and then I once again found myself with too much time on my hands. Rather than sit around being bitter about it, I decided to focus all of my energy into solving Clara's case. I knew she was still angry with me, but that didn't mean I could go back on my promise to help her. Even if she had suggested I was just a lovesick schoolboy, I had it in the back of my mind that there was probably more than one person responsible for framing Clara. I tried to do what they showed on TV and put myself in the mindset of the criminal. I focused on how I would go about pulling off such a crime while deflecting the blame onto someone else. It wasn't always easy for me to get my head around this form of deception, as I actually started feeling guilty at times over my own thought process. I had to treat this as a type of game before I could get fully immersed in my goal of unraveling the perfect crime. After reviewing all of the facts, I felt compelled to focus mainly on her ex-boyfriend, Aaron Mitchell, as my primary suspect. I really didn't know what drew me to him exactly, except that whenever Clara would speak of their relationship, I would get the distinct impression that things weren't quite as wonderful as she made them out to be. There was just something about her description of the man that didn't fit with my profile of what a loving boyfriend was supposed to be. I just hoped that I wasn't allowing my jealousy of him to cloud my better judgment. It took almost no time to track down Aaron's whereabouts, and once I did, I started to gather a pretty substantial amount of circumstantial evidence against the man. I knew that nothing I had discovered so far would be enough to overturn her conviction, but I at least felt I was making some sort of progress in that direction. For that to happen, though, I would surely have to recover the missing $92 million. Only then would I have enough leverage to get the Justice Department to reopen the case. As luck, or perhaps fate, would have it, Aaron's current address showed that he lived in the same city as my Aunt Linda on my mother's side. When I brought up that I wanted to go for a visit, Dad was all for the idea. He was never really crazy about the fact that I was working in a women's prison to begin with, and when I started discussing my friendship with Clara, I could tell he was starting to get concerned about how close we were becoming. To avoid arguments, I basically stopped mentioning her to him altogether. I knew he was thinking that this trip would help get my mind off of her, but if he even suspected what my real motives were for going, I was sure that everything would have most definitely hit the fan. In all actuality, it was really great to see Aunt Linda again. Since she and her husband both worked the day shift, I was pretty much left to my own devices until they arrived back home sometime after 6 p.m. each night. I quickly found Aaron's place of residence, and for nearly 2 weeks straight, I stalked him relentlessly, desperately hoping that he would eventually slip up and possibly lead me to where he had stashed the stolen loot. It was nearing the end of my stay with Aunt Linda when I suddenly hit pay dirt. I was tailing Aaron on the subway when I noticed him removing what looked like a laptop case out of a locker. He then proceeded to the nearest McDonald's, where he ordered lunch. I watched him take out his laptop and log on to their free Wi-Fi connection. I quickly booted up my own laptop and hacked into his system through their non-secured line. Did I mention before that the advanced lessons Mr. Gregory had taught Ethan and me were in the field of computer hacking? Gregory showed us the basics, but it was through my own skill and determination that I advanced to the level I am today, which, by the way, is damn good if I do say so myself. As I sat there letting my PC record everything the scumsucker was doing, I knew that I finally had him right where I wanted him. Now it was time to call in the big guns. I am sure the representative from Hamilton Financial Group was curious as to why I made an appointment to see him, especially after I requested that not only their attorney, one of their claim adjusters, and their best IT man be present in the meeting, but also that I wanted the top man in charge of building the case against Clara to be there as well. "Good afternoon, gentlemen. Thank you for meeting with me today," I said as we proceeded to get comfortable in their conference room. I was then introduced to the 5 men I had asked to be at the meeting. Richard Grant was the senior accounts manager for Hamilton Financial Group and obviously the leader of the group. Next to him was their claim adjuster, Stephen Hayes. Off to the left sat Michael Foster, Hamilton's top IT specialist. Last but certainly not least was Robert Clayton, Hamilton's head of security and the man who built the case against Clara. This was certainly going to be one very interesting meeting. "Noah Carter, you said that you had a matter of substantial monetary importance to discuss with us?" Mr. Grant asked. "That is correct, sir. I have recently come across some new information which I would like to share with you regarding Clara Middleton," I said. "That case was settled months ago," Mr. Grant told me. "You convicted the wrong person. Clara is innocent," I stated with conviction. "I can assure you, son, that regardless of whatever lies she has been feeding you, she most certainly is guilty." "I should know. I'm the one who built the case against her," Mr. Clayton replied. "Excuse me for saying so, sir, but you didn't do a very thorough job," I came back at him. "I have gathered so much proof that supports her innocence, I started to wonder if you weren't in on the attempt to frame her yourself. I have since revised that theory, as I could not come up with any link between you and the real culprits," I answered back sternly. "This is ridiculous. Why are we even here wasting our time with this kid in the first place?" Mr. Clayton asked. "I agree, Robert," Mr. Grant replied before turning to me and saying, "Noah, I think we are done here. On the contrary, gentlemen, we are just getting started. That is, If you ever want to see your $94 million again, I threatened, you don't even know how much was stolen. Miss Middleton took $92 million, not $94 million, Mr. Hayes corrected me, speaking for the first time since our introduction. For a claims adjuster, you of all people should know how fast interest can accumulate, especially when we're talking about that much cash, I replied. So you're saying that she has it stored in a bank somewhere? Mr. Grant asked. No, you obviously weren't listening. Clara has no idea where the money went or who set her up. But I do, I told him. Okay, so where is it then? Mr. Clayton asked. Not so fast, guys. We have a few things to settle before I hand out that information, I told them. Don't worry. If you can help us recover the missing funds, you'll get the $600,000 reward money, Mr. Grant assured me. No, I won't. The money is to go to Miss Middleton for all the hell you've put her through. That is, of course, after you help me get her released from prison. By the way, I don't just want her conviction overturned. I want to completely expunge her record of any wrongdoing. Is that understood? I asked sternly. This is ridiculous. How can we be assured that you even know where the money is to begin with? Mr. Clayton asked. Here is the account and routing number to a bank in Switzerland. I'm sure you can verify for yourselves that the money is in there. I know you won't be able to transfer any funds without the username and password, and I am holding on to that information until we reach an agreement, I told them. It looked like Mr. Hayes was about to lose his mind when he came back into the room and confirmed that $94 million in change was indeed sitting in the account I had provided. This was by far the closest any of them had ever been to recovering the missing funds. Okay, Noah, what exactly do you want? Mr. Grant asked. First of all, sir, please call me Noah. Mr. Carter is my father. Secondly, in addition to what I have already stated, I want complete and total amnesty for myself regarding any illegal actions I may have taken to obtain the evidence I am prepared to present to you, I told them. That would be up to the district attorney, Mr. Clayton informed me. I realized that, but since she refused to come to this meeting, I figured that I could get you gentlemen up to speed on what I discovered first, and then it would be easier to convince her to get on board with this as well, I told them. All right, Noah, we're ready to listen, Mr. Grant said. First of all, I need to make a confession. I am a computer hacker, and without trying to brag about my abilities, I would have to say that I am very good at it, I told them. Okay, Noah, I can relate to what you're saying, but how does that affect Miss Middleton's case? Michael Foster, the IT expert, asked. These are the instructions on how to design a very unique type of hacking device that, when connected to someone's computer, will not only send information back to the owner of the device without being detected, but will also let someone else completely take over the affected machine, making it seem like the instructions were coming directly from the machine itself. A parts list of everything needed to build such a device is on the second page. Here is a list of the items sent by various retailers to a post office box opened by Aaron Mitchell about a month before the money disappeared from Clara's client accounts. You will notice that every part on the list was delivered just days from one another, I pointed out. How can we be sure these lists are authentic? Mr. Grant asked. That is why I requested Mr. Foster's presence here at this meeting, so he could confirm everything I show you, I told them. I'll tell you, even if what you're saying is true, it proves absolutely nothing, Mr. Clayton said. On its own, you are correct. But combined with some of the other evidence I have gathered, I have no doubt that before this meeting is over, all of you will feel as I do, that Miss Middleton is completely innocent in this matter, I replied. So who do you think is responsible for taking the money? Mr. Grant wanted to know. It was actually a joint venture between both Aaron Mitchell, who was Clara's boyfriend at the time, and another woman who works here by the name of Megan Caldwell, I said. That is ridiculous. I checked both these people out myself, and not only was I unable to find them guilty of any wrongdoing outside of a traffic violation, but I found no evidence whatsoever to suggest that they even knew one another, Mr. Clayton replied. You obviously didn't dig deep enough. Did you know that they were high school sweethearts? I asked. That is not possible. They didn't even attend the same school together and lived in different cities, Mr. Clayton told me. That may be true, but here is a copy of their prom picture. Do you recognize anyone? I asked, smiling. This can't be. How did they even meet? Mr. Clayton wanted to know. Well, according to this genealogy report, Megan's parents lived right next door to Aaron's grandparents. I would say it's likely that they met while he was visiting them, I suggested. Even if they did know each other, that doesn't prove that they stole the money, Mr. Grant stated. Well, guys, since I haven't even scratched the surface of what I uncovered, you may want to have lunch brought in because this meeting is going to last a while, I suggested. Look, I've had enough of this. We have video evidence that shows Miss Middleton sitting at her desk during the time the money was stolen. How do you plan to explain away that? Mr. Clayton asked. That brings up my next point, sir. Have you taken a really good look at your video? I wanted to know. Of course I have. It clearly shows Miss Middleton sitting at her desk with her back turned towards the camera during the time that our client accounts were being drained from her computer. He stated proudly. Let's just take another quick peek at it, shall we? I'm sure that you gentlemen won't mind if I plug this into your projector screen, so we can all see it at once. I suggested as I proceeded to pull the video up on my laptop. How did you get a hold of that video? Mr. Clayton asked. I already answered that, sir. I'm a computer hacker, remember? I answered. But our server is completely secure, Michael Foster said. Mr. Foster, you of all people should know that no server is ever completely secure. I admit you have it locked down fairly well, but you would have to close off a few more ports before I would consider it a challenge. And even then, I could still get past your security systems. It would just take me a little longer, that's all, I said, completely shocking the poor IT manager who thought his system was nearly impenetrable. Okay, gentlemen, let's get back on track for a bit. Can we all agree that this is the video shot on the day the money disappeared from your client's accounts? I asked. Once they all affirmed this, I ran the file through one of my video enhancing programs, focusing on a spot where light was bouncing off a glass door. When I zoomed in, you could clearly make out the mirror image of Clara's reflection. She's eating lunch. Her monitor isn't even on, Mr. Clayton exclaimed. That's right. And if you continue watching, you'll see that she never even turns it back on until after she finishes eating. Which, by the way, is after the money transfer took place, I said. I can't believe we had this video the entire time and no one ever noticed this, Mr. Grant said, stunned. If you think that's unbelievable, just wait till you see this next part, I replied. I switched to the next video clip, where Megan Caldwell came into Clara's office and conveniently spilled her soda all over the floor. Naturally, Megan bent down on her hands and knees, trying to quickly clean up the mess she made while Clara ran to the ladies' room to get some extra paper towels. I zoomed in once again as the camera caught Megan's reflection, and we all watched her remove some type of electrical device from Clara's computer and stick it in her purse. Just in case you're wondering, gentlemen, I also have the clip of Miss Caldwell planting this device as well. It seems the poor woman can be quite clumsy at times, I told them. I'll admit that on the surface, this evidence appears to be quite damaging. But how can we be certain what the device actually was? I mean, for all we know, it might have just been an MP3 player, Mr. Clayton suggested. Well, this is where things start to get complicated. How much do any of you know about cell phones and satellites? I asked. I once worked installing satellite TV, so I would say I am quite versed on the subject, Mr. Foster stated. Good. Then you are aware that phone signals are bounced off satellites and beamed to their desired locations? I asked. Of course I am. But how does that pertain to this case? He wanted to know. Clara's ex-boyfriend, Aaron Mitchell, keeps a laptop in a locker at the subway station. I discovered this when I was tailing him earlier this week. After retrieving it from his hiding place, he proceeded to the nearest McDonald's, where he not only had lunch but accessed his account to check on the money. As I recorded him doing this, I hacked into their non-secure router and copied everything I could from his hard drive before he terminated the connection. It was when I reviewed his internet history that I came across the plans for the hacking device I gave you earlier. As you can see, the reason it is so effective is that it uses a nearly untraceable prepaid data account to connect to its host, I explained. So if it is untraceable, how does that help us recover the stolen money? Mr. Grant asked. I didn't say that it was untraceable. I said it was nearly untraceable. You see, sir, cell phone signals not only are beamed off of cell towers, but they also bounce off each other. Does everyone here understand how sonar works? I asked. Of course I know how sonar works. You are talking to an ex-Marine, son, Mr. Grant replied. Good. Then you are aware that pulses are sent through the water, and when they bounce off something, it can be determined not only the size of the particular object but how far away it is as well, I explained, mainly for the benefit of the other gentleman. That is an adequate description, son. But how does it pertain to this situation? Mr. Grant asked. Well, sir, cell phones can work pretty much the same way as sonar. I may not be able to trace a prepaid data signal because it is tied to a usage card rather than a personal account. However, if the signal bounces off a contract phone, I can trace that and find out not only who the phone belongs to but how far away it is from the other device as well. If the contract phone happens to be a smartphone with GPS capabilities, I can reverse the signal and trace it back to the phone in question, I explained. I seriously doubt that you could do something like that, Mr. Foster challenged. Well, I can prove it to you, sir. But I have a few more pieces of evidence to present before I do, I stated. I would like to hear about this so-called evidence as well, came a voice from the doorway. Oh, please come in, Mrs. Pierce. Gentlemen, this is State's District Attorney Natalie Pierce, I said, standing up and extending my hand to greet her, as my dad always taught me to do. I am glad you could finally join us today, I said sincerely. Thank you, Noah. Though from the sound of Mr. Grant's voice, it appeared I didn't have all that much of a choice, she said. Well, now that you are here, Noah was about to explain just how he managed to ascertain certain evidence that the rest of us overlooked, Mr. Clayton said. Before I go any further, since a member of the court system is now present, I must once again insist on immunity to protect myself from prosecution, I told them. Don't worry, Noah. Mr. Grant has already informed me of all of your demands over the phone. If you can help us recover the missing money and prove to my satisfaction that Miss Middleton is innocent as you claim, then I see no problem granting you most of what you requested, she said. What does that mean? I asked. If you can show me that Miss Middleton was not involved with the missing funds, I should have no problem overturning her conviction and getting her released from prison. It is very difficult, however, to convince a judge to completely expunge someone's record unless you can prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that they are innocent, she explained. I think with the evidence I have, I will be able to do just that. However, I am concerned about the methods I used to obtain that evidence, I told her. Don't be, Noah, because I am prepared to grant you full immunity as long as you only used your hacking skills to gather information rather than alter it, Mrs. Pierce assured me. No offense, ma'am, but can I please have that in writing before we continue? I requested. No offense taken, young man, she said, sliding the already signed and notarized document over to me. We took a few minutes to fill Mrs. Pierce in on what was discussed so far and get her up to speed on the evidence I had already presented. Okay, as I was saying, cell phone signals bounce off one another much like sonar does. What most people are unaware of is that cell phone companies not only track these signals, but they archive their paths as well in case there is ever a dispute over usage. I pulled up the archive from this building for the day in question and discovered that there was a prepaid data signal being sent from within 24 inches of Clara's desk that corresponded with not only the time that the money transfer took place but also when she was eating lunch as well. I tracked that signal and found that it bounced off a smartphone that was only 12 inches away from it. I later determined that phone's owner to be Aaron Mitchell. Curiously, I was able to detect another prepaid signal, and again, it was within inches of Aaron's smartphone. I started researching the usage of that phone and discovered that the vast majority of calls both made and received could be traced to another prepaid phone user. As luck would have it, this user also had a smartphone, and I was able to determine that it belonged to Megan Caldwell, I explained. This disk will show all the times that the pair used these phones to talk to one another. Since they were purchased by Miss Caldwell with her credit card a month before this incident took place, there's a direct link tying both of them to this setup, I told them while handing over the disk. How can we be sure these are the phones that Miss Caldwell purchased when the stores don't keep track of the phone serial numbers when they are sold? Mrs. Pierce questioned. They may not record the serial numbers, but they do have to scan the activation codes for the phone cards, which she purchased along with the phones that day. There's a link showing those cards were used for both phones. By the way, on the day the funds were stolen, there was a call to Miss Caldwell's prepaid phone immediately following the money transfer and just prior to her little accident in Miss Middleton's office, where she removed the electronic device from Clara's computer. In case you're wondering, that call came from Aaron Mitchell's prepaid phone, I told them. That is a very fascinating story, Noah, but I still don't believe a word of it. Hell, I have been working with computers for the last 25 years, and I can't even do what you suggest," Mr. Foster challenged. "I'm afraid I'm having a hard time swallowing this one myself," Mrs. Pierce admitted. "If you assure me that I am still under immunity, I would be happy to prove I can do what I claim," I told them. "Seriously? And just how do you propose to do that?" she asked. "Have Mr. Grant go out into the hall and pick one of his employees? But don't bother telling me which one he chooses, as I'm sure I will be able to reveal that information to you in due time on my own. Make sure they have a smartphone, that they take it with them and keep it turned on. Send them to a store to buy a prepaid phone and then have them pick a restaurant and go there for lunch. Tell them to call one of you on your cell phones using the prepaid phone once they get to wherever they are going, and I will tell you who they are, where they are, and who is sitting next to them. By the way, no tricks like switching cell phones or something. Remember, I am doing this to help you retrieve your missing money and get an unjustly convicted woman out of prison. Please respect that," I requested. Mr. Grant took me up on my challenge, and we all sat around discussing the case until a call came into his cell phone about 20 minutes later. With Mr. Foster looking over my shoulder in awe, I quickly determined that the caller was Rebecca Lawson and that she was at Emerson Bistro on Westwood Drive. I asked Mr. Grant to tell her that there was a 50-year-old gentleman sitting about 15 feet away from her by the name of David Collins. Instead of possibly spooking the man, I requested that she walk up and pretend to know him, making up a fake name and claiming that he looked very much like someone she used to know in high school. Mrs. Lawson was also around 50 years old. We all listened on Mr. Grant's speakerphone as their conversation took place with predictable, at least for me, that is, results. When she was out of Mr. Collins's earshot, Rebecca wanted to know how we knew where she was and who was beside her. Mr. Grant wisely told her that was not important right now and advised her to finish her lunch, which was on the company's dime, and head back to the office. After Mr. Grant ended the call, I tried to answer the rest of their questions, and we replayed the video clips of Megan Caldwell planting and then removing the alleged hacking device from Clara's computer. Damn. Now they have me sounding like a lawyer, I thought to myself. It took another 2 weeks for us to get an appointment with a federal judge, and a week after that before any action was taken on Clara's behalf. I was told that the process was greatly expedited due to the level of injustice that Miss Middleton was subjected to. What a crock of nonsense. I knew they didn't give a damn about Clara. All they wanted was their money back, and I was not going to give that up until I was sure she would be released. By this time, my dad had found out what was going on. To say he wasn't pleased would be an understatement. I know he grudgingly respected me for keeping my word and helping to bring a miscarriage of justice to an end, but he definitely didn't like the way I went about it, especially using my trip to Aunt Linda's house primarily to spy on Aaron Mitchell. After talking with Linda and her confirming that I did spend nearly every evening I was there with them and that she gave me free rein to do whatever I wanted during the day, Dad came to realize that my visit really wasn't a hoax and that I did what most people do when visiting relatives. Mix a little business with pleasure. He reluctantly gave in and said he was proud of me. In the end, there really wasn't much else he could do anyway, as it was now a legal matter and completely out of his hands. I fought with myself as to whether I should be at the prison when Clara heard the news about her release. I so would have loved to see the look on her face when she found out that I had kept my word. But the last thing I wanted was for her to feel like I expected anything in return or that she owed me for helping her. In the end, I justified not going by claiming that I had already missed my first week as a high school senior and needed to get caught back up with my classes. Yeah, like I really gave a damn about that. I did get a rather unexpected surprise, however, when Mr. Grant presented me with my very own check for $600,000. I started to argue that it was supposed to go to Clara, but he assured me that she received one as well. He said that his company had recently doubled its reward offer in an attempt to get information that would lead them to the missing money. He purposely kept his mouth shut about it until the deal was signed because he felt that I deserved to be compensated for all the effort I put into recovering the missing money and helping to correct a major injustice. I was also offered open-ended jobs by both Mr. Grant to help beef up their server security and by Mrs. Pierce as an investigator for the state. Unfortunately, if I ever decided to work for her, I would have to dispense with a lot of my hacking, as most of the evidence I would uncover using these skills would not be admissible if they were presented by a court-appointed representative. I decided, for the time being, just to be a regular student and perhaps take Mr. Grant up on his offer when I finished high school. I obviously didn't need the money, and now, with $600,000 in the bank, Dad and I no longer had to worry about where my college funds would come from. I knew this was a huge load off his mind and was grateful for the opportunity to reduce the burdens on him. I hadn't heard a thing from Clara since she was released, and I just assumed she had moved away and gotten on with her life. My birthday always coincided with the Christmas holiday growing up. Kind of sucked. Don't get me wrong. I loved the fact that I was always out of school on my birthday, but I hated that we could never really plan anything special to do. It was usually either too cold outside or, since Christmas was so close, even if I had friends to do something with, they wouldn't have been able to spare the time. This year was shaping up to be the worst of all. It was the first birthday I would spend without either my mother or Ethan. To top it off, Dad was called away on business and wouldn't be home to celebrate with me either. If I were being honest, I think he planned it this way because he just couldn't deal with facing the day without my mother. Mom absolutely loved Christmas. She would always fix a huge meal and then be all giddy about getting up early the next morning to shop for sales. This was the first year that I would ever have any real money, and I didn't give a damn about going anywhere to spend it. As I was walking home to what I knew would be an empty house, I wondered what I was going to do with myself for the week. Most teenagers would dream of having the house to themselves, but to me it just seemed lonely. As expected, there was a card on the table from Dad and another in the mailbox from Ethan, but what I really wanted more than anything was just someone to talk to. I must have fallen asleep on the couch because I was woken up by the doorbell ringing. Figuring it was probably just some neighbor Dad had conned into checking on me, I was definitely not at my best when I opened the door to get the shock of my life. "Clara, what are you doing here?" I asked. "Well, I came to see you, silly. You didn't think I would miss being here on your birthday, did you?" she asked. "Why wouldn't I think that? First, you got mad and wouldn't let me come visit you in prison. Then, when you were released, I didn't hear a single word from you for months," I complained. "I was in shock on the day they released me. One minute I was sitting in my jail cell thinking that I would probably be there for the rest of my life, and the next thing I knew, they were handing me a check for $600,000 and telling me I was free to go. They even said that my record was wiped clean of any wrongdoing, and that I would never have to admit to being incarcerated on a job application because there would no longer be any evidence of it. Can you even imagine what that felt like?" she asked. "No, I can't. But it has been months since your release. Why haven't you at least tried to contact me?" I asked. "Well, I did call and talk with your father," she started to say. "You what?" I asked, completely shocked for the second time that night. "Yeah. We decided that it would be best if I waited to contact you until I was a bit more stable," she admitted. "So you're still treating me like a child? Calling to ask my daddy if it's all right for you to visit?" I said with utter annoyance. "I did not mean for you to take it that way," she said. "How could I possibly take it any other way when I am not allowed to decide for myself who I want to be friends with?" I asked her, "Look, perhaps this wasn't the best idea for me to come here. Maybe I should just go," she said, while turning toward the door. "That's right. Run away again, just like you did when we were working together," I told her. "Don't you understand how hard that was for me? I was becoming too attached and knew you would be leaving soon. I was so depressed in that place. I never let anyone get near me. Then you came along and were my link to the outside world. My problem was that the closer we became, the more I knew I would never truly be a part of that world. It was like freedom was dangling on a string, near enough for me to almost feel it, but yet so far away that it would take literally a lifetime to achieve. I had no choice but to run." She wept, her voice choked with emotion. "Oh God, Clara, please don't cry. I know I went about it all wrong, and I shouldn't have kept telling you that I was working on getting you released. But I was just so desperate to be able to offer you at least some degree of hope that I couldn't keep my damn mouth shut. I'm so sorry that I hurt you. Can you ever forgive me for being so insensitive?" I begged. "Forgive you? Honey, you kept your promise. Hell, you did more than keep your promise. Baby, I saw the tape. You know Mr. Grant recorded your entire meeting, right?" she asked. "Yes. I was expecting him to. It didn't matter. I had more than enough evidence to reopen the case even without the money. Once I had that as well, nothing was going to stop me from accomplishing what I set out to do. I told her. I just have to ask, why did you want me to have the reward money when you were the one who discovered the truth? She wanted to know. Hey, I got my share of the money as well, I argued. Yeah, but Mr. Grant had to trick you into taking it. If he would have told you about the extra $600,000 before the deal was signed, you would have insisted that I got that as well, wouldn't you? She asked. Yes. You can have it now if you want, I told her. I am not taking one dime of that money. It's yours, and you more than earned it. What I don't understand is why you wanted to give it away, she said. Clara, I worked for about a month gathering evidence to get you released, but you had your entire life ripped out from under you. When we first met, it was clear to see that you hated the world. Then, when you started to let me in, I got just a little glimpse of the woman I could tell you used to be. And it was sickening to know how much they broke your spirit. I was telling the truth when I said I believed you were innocent. I knew because that's what my heart saw every time I looked at you. When I asked myself who deserved the money more, I didn't even have to think about it to come up with the answer. I explained while watching her tears start flowing again. I asked you to stop crying. I teased as I dabbed her cheeks with a soft Kleenex. I'll try, Clara sniffled, but I just have to ask. What made you suspect Aaron? Hell, even I didn't think he had anything to do with what happened. I'm not really sure of that one myself. I suppose that part of it could have been jealousy, but I guess the real reason is that your description of the man just didn't match my definition of a loving boyfriend, I confessed. You were actually jealous of Aaron? She asked. Why wouldn't I be? Aaron was your man. I was merely just some schoolboy nerd there to help fix the computers, I replied honestly. I'm just sorry you had to put up with all the teasing that the women there gave you, Clara said. Hell, the reason I was teased so much is because they were jealous themselves. I had an actual friend on the outside that I could meet with regularly, and they didn't. When they found out that you were the one most influential in getting me released, they all gave me a message for you, she said. And that would be? I asked. If you could do the same thing for any of them, they would make damn sure that nobody would ever be able to call you a boy again. They even went so far as to say that the first thing I should do upon my release is find you, check into the nearest motel, and not let you leave until you couldn't get it up again for a month, she told me. As much as I would love for you to do that, I got you released because it was the right thing to do, not so you would be grateful enough to take my virginity, I told her. I actually feel the same way, she said, momentarily crushing my dreams of being with her tonight. That is part of the reason I waited so long to contact you. I wanted to be sure what I felt was more than just gratitude. You deserve that, she finished. So how do you feel about me? I asked, not really sure I wanted to know the answer. That is really a difficult question to explain. I have so many emotions when it comes to you, and let's be honest, gratitude is among them. But there really is more to it than that. I am attracted to you, both in body and soul. I realized that when we were working together, and it frightened me. To be honest, it still frightens me, she admitted. Why? Are you afraid I would hurt you? I wanted to know. No, never that. I'm just concerned about you becoming too attached to me and not trying to find a girl your own age afterward. Clara tried to explain. So it really is just about gratitude then? It's okay for us to have sex, but I'm not good enough to consider dating long-term? I asked. It has nothing to do with not being good enough. But I am several years older than you. I have also been through some devastating experiences that have permanently changed my outlook on the world. I'm just not sure that we would be compatible long-term, she confessed. My mom was the only one I knew who could predict the future, and unfortunately, she is not around anymore to ask. I admit that I have been attracted to you from the beginning, but I feel more than that for you now. I'm not sure what it will lead to, but if you feel the same for me, don't we at least owe it to ourselves and each other to give dating a try? I argued. But what if it doesn't work out? She asked. Then we get hurt. We heal or stay bitter, and finally we move on just like everybody else, I said. What would happen if I agreed? She wanted to know. Well, I still would love for you to try and put me out of commission for a month, but we don't really need a motel room. My dad will be away on business for the holiday, I said. I know. Your dad told me when we talked earlier today, she admitted. Dad knew you were coming? Did he know why? I asked, bewildered. Noah, your dad is many things, but stupid is not one of them. I told him what I wanted to do, and he said you were of age and he couldn't stop us even if he wanted to. He did make me promise to be safe, however, which was part of the reason I waited so long to see you. I didn't want us to have to use protection, she explained. Clara, I only want this to happen if it is something that you desire as well. Please don't make my first time only about you being grateful, I pleaded. Noah, I want you to know how much you mean to me right now. I haven't felt this way about anyone else. Not even Aaron. I'd be lying if I said gratitude wasn't a part of it. But it's not the only reason I'm here. I'm not a fortune teller and I can't predict the future. But if you truly want me to be your girlfriend and not just someone passing through your life, I'm willing to give it a chance, she said. As I prepared for what lay ahead, I reflected on how emotions often ran high at the beginning of something new. It felt like walking a fine line between excitement and caution, a balance adults constantly try to maintain when embarking on a relationship. My thoughts were racing, but I resolved to let things unfold naturally, trusting the connection we were building. Every moment with Clara felt meaningful, and I couldn't help but be deeply in tune with her presence. I focused on every small gesture, the tone of her voice, and the way she looked at me. It reminded me of what my mom used to say. Communication isn't just about words. It's about listening with your heart, your eyes, and your touch. Taking her advice to heart, I found myself in a state of awareness, attuned to every nuance. It was as if the world had quieted around us, leaving just the two of us to navigate this profound shared experience. What struck me most was the mutual understanding and sincerity between us, a foundation that made me hopeful for the journey we were starting together. Clara stayed with me throughout the extended weekend and even fixed a small turkey breast for the two of us to help commemorate the holiday. Although I did miss my family, just having her around kept the loneliness at bay and gave me something to be thankful for. And I'm not just talking about the sex. By the time she had to return to her apartment, I had reluctantly convinced her to try and give our relationship a chance despite our 7-year age difference. Although we didn't have everything in common, I felt that we shared enough interests to make it work. And besides, we truly cared for each other. That was something that her previous relationship surely lacked. Clara and I started dating, and although things weren't always perfect, I was more than satisfied with the direction of our relationship. My dad, on the other hand, was not overly pleased with our decision to continue seeing each other. He, of course, knew of our intended coupling but figured that it was a one-time coming-of-age experience that, once occurred, would just remain a fond memory for the both of us. He couldn't forbid me from being with Clara, but he wasn't real open to the idea and would occasionally voice his discontentment over the situation. This led to us always meeting somewhere other than my family home. After graduation, I talked Clara into allowing me to move in with her temporarily. We both knew that I would be attending college in the fall, MIT to be precise, and we wanted to spend as much time together as possible before that occurred. I could tell that Dad was not happy with my choice of roommates, but again, I was of age to make those kinds of decisions myself, so there really wasn't much he could do about it anyway. They say that you don't really get to know your partner until you begin living together. Sharing your day-to-day lives together is what truly determines if you are compatible for a long-term commitment. I felt that my connection with Clara was every bit as strong as the bond my parents once shared, and while trusting my instincts in this matter, I decided to use a portion of my reward money to ascertain the perfect token of my affection for her. I just hoped she would be moved enough to grant me my fondest desire. It was after a truly exceptional bout of lovemaking that I was quietly pondering how to broach the subject of matrimony when Clara hit me with a bombshell that totally annihilated my blissful existence. "Noah, would you do something for me?" she asked. "What do you require, my love?" I asked. "I need you to promise that you will do it before I tell you what I want," she replied cryptically. "All right, honey," I said, totally trusting her. "If it is within my power and not illegal, you have my word," I told her. "I need you to promise not to try and find me," she said. "What are you talking about?" I asked, suddenly terrified of her response. "Honey, as much as I've enjoyed our time together, we are just not right for each other long-term," she told me. "Baby, you're wrong. I love you. If it's a commitment you're worried about," I started to say. "Noah, I've met somebody," she said, cutting me off. "It was during that week you had to go home and help your dad. He knows about you and understands that our relationship is complicated. I am moving in with him after you leave for college next week, Clara said. Baby, I thought you loved me, I asked, tears forming in my eyes. Honey, I am very fond of you, and I'll always be grateful for what you did for me, she tried to explain. So this was all just payback for getting you released from prison? Like your friend said you should do? I asked. No, honey, it was much more than that, she tried to assure me. Have you slept with him? I wanted to know. I don't really see where that should make a difference. My mind is already made up, she said, avoiding the question. Damn it, Clara, it matters to me. Did you sleep with the guy or not? I asked more forcefully. Well, if you must know, then yes, we have slept together, she admitted. Baby, I'm sorry, it's just that. She started to say. Stop. Just stop. I don't want to hear anymore. I yelled as I opened the closet and threw my suitcase on the bed. Noah, you don't have to leave yet. We have the rest of the week to be together. Believe me, he understands, she tried to explain. He may understand, but I certainly don't. Please, Clara, if you ever cared for me at all, even a little, you will take a drive for about an hour or so while I pack. Then I will be out of your life for good. You have my word, I will only take what is mine. I managed to request, my voice strained with emotion. But, baby, you really don't, she tried to tell me. Clara, please do this one last thing for me. Let me at least leave here with some shred of dignity, I begged. All the joy that had come back into my life since my mother's passing had once again vanished, leaving me with a feeling of not just loneliness and despair but utter abandonment. I did the only thing that I could think of short of suicide, and threw myself into my studies and projects at the expense of absolutely everything else. 2 years later, hello, Miss Middleton. May I come in? The gentleman asked as she greeted him at her front door. Of course, Mr. Carter. Please do, she replied at the shock of seeing Noah's father at her doorstep. That's a very handsome boy you have there. He has Noah's eyes, my dad said. How did you find me? She asked. Through a friend of Noah's, Ethan. It seems he's pretty good at that sort of thing. Not as good as Noah, I am told, but not bad nonetheless, he told her. Does Noah know about little Ethan? She asked. I honestly don't know, Miss Middleton, he said. Please call me Clara, she requested. All right, Clara. You can call me Henry, he replied. Henry, please don't tell your son about Ethan, she begged. Clara, if I thought he would hear me, I would shout it from the rooftops, my dad told her. What are you talking about? She asked. He didn't do something foolish and run off, did he? She wanted to know. You mean like you did? Henry asked. No, ma'am, that is not his style. You see, Noah is a lot like me in a way. I'll be the first to admit I don't know a damn thing about those computers he loves so much. But we handle our grief in very similar ways. When my wife passed, I had no idea how to deal with it, so I threw myself into my work, ignoring everything else around me, including my own son. After he left your place, Noah came home for a brief period. It was never any secret that I disapproved of your relationship, and when he eventually told me what happened, I made the mistake of saying that I thought it was for the best. Noah left that night, and we have barely spoken to each other since, Henry told her. I'm sorry, sir. I accidentally found the ring that Noah had purchased and knew what he was planning to do. I am 7 years his senior, and my biological clock was ticking away. Noah was just about to start college. It would have been unfair of me to tie him down with a wife and child at this stage of his life. So I decided instead to stop using birth control without telling him, and when I became pregnant, I made up the story of another man. I thought I was prepared for the confrontation, but for some reason, I never dreamed he'd ask me if I slept with the guy. I guess the thought of cheating on him was so foreign to me that I completely blocked that possibility out of my head. When Noah asked the question, it threw me off guard at first and I didn't know how to respond. Then I decided to just go with it, thinking that it might help him accept the situation better. The minute I answered yes, I knew it was a huge mistake. I have never seen the color drain from someone's face as quickly as it did from his that night. But worse than that were his eyes. It was like I was looking at a totally different person. They were completely soulless. I knew I had hurt him beyond belief, and it was at that moment I almost relented and told him the truth, she explained. But then he begged me to leave for a bit so that he could pack his stuff with what he called a shred of his dignity left in place. I drove down the street, parked my car, and sat there and cried until I saw him leave about an hour later. When I got back home, everything I had ever purchased for him was folded neatly in a box sitting on our bed. He went around the house and collected every picture ever taken of us together and put them in the box as well. He even included the one from his wallet. On top of everything was the ring he had purchased for me. It was like he didn't want to remember any shred of our life together. Hell, even the toothbrush I bought for him was in that damn box, she explained. Clara, I am not here to put blame on anyone. You did what you thought was right at the time, as did I. But these days I am starting to see things a bit differently. You see, dear, I wasn't always successful. The fact is that I grew up rather poor. Noah's mother, on the other hand, although not rich, came from an upper-middle-class family. We started seeing each other in college, although at the time, our dates consisted mainly of walks in the park or rented movies at her apartment. I attended school on scholarships, and although I had a part-time job to help pay for expenses, money was still very tight. I knew that I wasn't good enough to be with Virginia, and one night, out of sheer frustration, I told her so. She responded by telling me that I was unqualified to make that assumption. She told me that, right or wrong, it was her choice to decide who she wanted to be with, and no one else's, including mine. She did say that what I should be asking myself instead was whether or not she was good enough for me. I didn't even have to ponder that question for a minute to know what my answer was. I proposed on the spot, and we were married 6 months later. My life with Virginia may not have always been perfect, but I wouldn't trade 1 minute of it for all the money in the world. My grandfather always said that if two people loved one another enough, the rest of life's problems were nothing more than weeds in a garden, waiting to be plowed away, Henry said. So you are here to plead Noah's case then? She asked, her voice showing annoyance. No, Clara. I wish it were that simple. You see, after he left home, Noah's schoolwork and the extracurricular projects he was working on became the center focus in his life above absolutely everything else, including his health. With no one around to keep him grounded, he wasn't eating right. That is, when he bothered to eat at all, and he would often go for days at a time with either very little or sometimes no sleep whatsoever. You can't continually abuse your body like that and remain healthy. According to his classmates, Noah came down with a bad case of the flu, yet he still refused to go to the doctor or even take the time off he needed to get well again. As a result, his flu turned into a case of full-blown pneumonia. It was just by sheer chance that one of his schoolmates noticed that he hadn't been to class in 2 days and stopped by his room to check on him. He said that he found Noah slumped over his computer and unresponsive. Clara, Noah slipped into a coma 2 nights ago, and the doctors say the chances of him coming out of it are very slim. The sad fact is that there just isn't any more fight left in him. I never got to say goodbye to my Virginia, as she died at the scene of the crash. I asked Noah's friend Ethan to locate you so that I could give you the chance I never had. So now I am asking, will you please come to the hospital with me so that we can say goodbye to Noah together? He wanted to know. I am sorry, Mr. Carter, but I can't do that, Clara said. All right, Miss Middleton. I am sorry to have bothered you, he replied while getting up to leave. No, Henry, you don't understand. There is nothing on earth that will keep me away from that hospital, but it's not to say goodbye. I am going to go there and beg Noah to fight for his family, she declared. Clara, honey, as much as I would love for that to happen, the doctors don't even think he'll survive beyond the next 48 hours, Henry told her with tears in his eyes. None of those doctors know your son like I do. When we met, I was a convicted felon, even though I had essentially done nothing wrong. My life was still over. Nobody would so much as lift a finger to help me. Then this 18-year-old kid came along and single-handedly not only got me released from prison, expunging my record of any wrongdoing in the process, but he also turned over $600,000 of his own reward money to me as partial compensation for my being locked up in the first place. The only reason he didn't turn over the entire million to me was that he didn't know they increased the reward money at the time he made the deal with them for my release. Did you know that he offered me the rest of the money the night I came to see him at your house? She asked. No, but with Noah being the way that he is, that really doesn't surprise me. I think we ought to be getting back to the hospital. What do you want to do about the baby? Henry asked. I am going to take him with me. Even if he's not allowed in the room, I want Noah to feel the spirit of his son close by. It will encourage him to fight harder to come back to us, Clara explained. Clara, I know that you want Noah to get better, and so do I. But, honey, you really should try and prepare yourself just in case that doesn't happen, Henry warned. Mr. Carter, I know you mean well, but you see, sir, I have already lost Noah twice. And both times it was through my own fears and insecurities that made it happen. I refuse to let it happen again, no matter what the reason. Noah will get better. I have no choice but to believe that, Clara explained. So, after packing some essentials for her and Ethan, the three of them began the long drive back to the hospital. Meanwhile, I awoke from sheer darkness to find myself sitting by a beautiful meadow, surrounded by lush green grass and springtime flowers. The sun glistened off the crystal-clear water, sparkling like flawless diamonds, creating a rainbow of vivid colors, the likes of which I had never seen before. In that very moment, a sense of peace washed over me, cleansing my soul of the torment it had previously been in. This place was perfect, perhaps maybe even a little too perfect. "Hi, honey," came a voice from behind me. "Mom?" I gasped, turning around. "Oh, Mom, is that really you?" I asked, my voice shaking. "Yes, baby, it's me," she replied, smiling warmly. I stood up and ran toward her, burying my head in her shoulder and crying profusely. "Oh, Mom, I've missed you so much," I sobbed. "I've missed you too, sweetheart," she said, squeezing me tightly in a hug that felt more real than anything I had ever experienced. When we finally let go of one another, I knew it was time to ask the question that had been haunting my mind. Is this just a dream, or am I really dead? I finally got up the nerve to ask. "Actually, darling, it's neither. You see, because of your actions, we are in a rather unique situation here," she told me. "What do you mean?" I asked, confused. "Noah, you racked up a lot of brownie points for what you did to help Clara. But what really got you noticed up here was when you refused to go with the attorney on the day she was going to be released. Even though you suspected how grateful she would be," my mom said. "So, you know about Clara?" I asked, blushing slightly. "Yes, honey. And before you ask, yes, I am aware of how intimate the two of you became," she told me. I still didn't understand. "Mom, if I'm not dead or dreaming, then why am I here?" I asked. "Noah, honey, you are not dead yet, but you are very close to it. Because of your unselfish acts of kindness, you have been granted the choice of either staying here and taking your rightful place in heaven, or returning to your life back on earth," she explained. "I don't have a life back there," I muttered bitterly. "You may have more there than what you think," my mom said softly. "Take my hand, baby. There are some things you need to see before you make your decision." Visions of the life I left behind suddenly. I looked down and could see myself in some kind of oxygen tent, being kept alive by machinery. I expected to see my father sitting in the chair next to my bed. But he wasn't there. Instead, in his place was Clara. "What is she doing here?" I asked, my voice laced with bitterness. "I would guess she came to see you," Mom answered. "Well, I don't want her here," I snapped. "That may be, but it's not like you can ask her to leave now, is it?" she said, raising an eyebrow. "Unless, of course, you decide to go back and do it yourself." "I already told you, I have nothing to go back to," I claimed stubbornly. Mom sighed. "Noah, the truth is, I sent for her," she admitted. I turned to her, stunned. "I don't understand. You're dead, Mom. It's not like you can just call her on the phone," I said. "I went to your father in his sleep and told him to contact her," Mom confessed. "Dad wouldn't do that," I argued. "He doesn't want me anywhere near Clara." "Noah, your dad just worries about you." I had to remind him that the responsibility in choosing a partner lies in the hands of each of us, and should not be made by someone else, no matter how good their intentions may be, she explained. I clenched my fists. "Mom, I still don't get why you would want her here. Don't you know she cheated on me?" I asked angrily. "Honey, you need to listen to what she has to say," Mom urged. "The last thing I want is to hear more of her lies," I replied bitterly. Mom looked me in the eyes. "Noah, I taught you a long time ago how to determine if someone was lying. Surely you haven't forgotten?" she asked gently. "You also said that once we got too emotionally attached to someone, our other senses would no longer give us accurate results," I pointed out. "That is true on Earth. But here, in this place, your intuition is heightened. You will know the truth, she said. I hesitated. Fine, I finally declared, stepping closer to hear what Clara was saying to my unconscious body. Clara's confession. Noah. Honey, it's me, Clara whispered, her voice trembling. Yeah, I know who you are. Would you please just get on with it? I muttered to myself. I need to tell you the truth, baby, she said, her voice raw with emotion. That would be a first, I scoffed. I never really cheated on you, she admitted. I froze. What? I whispered. There was never really any other guy. Well, that's not entirely true. There was someone else, but it's not what you think, she said. Yeah, famous last words, I muttered. You see, honey, the real reason I broke up with you is because I stopped taking my birth control pills, she admitted, her voice breaking. My blood ran cold. I did it on purpose, she confessed, tears streaming down her face. I felt like my world was tilting on its axis. You have to understand, sweetheart. I'm 7 years older than you. My time frame for safely having a child was growing shorter by the day. But you were just about to start college, and I didn't feel that it was fair to tie you down with fatherhood at this stage of your life. So, I made up that story about another man, she choked out. Couldn't breathe. I know it was wrong of me to lie to you, she continued, her voice shaking. But I truly believed I was doing it for your own good. Now you're here in this damn hospital bed, hooked up to all these machines when you should be home with me and your son. I reeled. What? I gasped. Oh, that's right, you don't know, do you? Clara sobbed. I had a baby boy, Noah, she whispered. I named him Ethan. He has your eyes. He is perfect. But he needs his daddy. I need his daddy, too. I felt my chest tighten. I brought the ring, sweetheart, she whispered, pulling out the box. If you still want me after all this, I will proudly wear it and show the world that I belong to no one but you. And if you don't, I will understand that too. But please, Noah, I am begging you, fight your way back to us. Tears welled in my mother's eyes. Noah, go home, she whispered. A surge of energy ran through my body. I could feel my son. I could feel Clara's love. And in that moment I made my choice. I opened my eyes.